You are listening to Talking Star Wars. Hello, Star Wars fans. I'm Connor,
And I'm Alex.
and today we're here to talk about Star Wars.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 79, Digital Likenesses, Recasting, and Recreations of Existing Characters in um, Visual Star Wars Media. So, our subject today is to review how Star Wars has handled characters who have been portrayed by certain actors, either voice actors or physical actors, when those actors have grown much older, but then visual media returns to the period in which that original work was set, but wants to use the same character.
Mhm.
And obviously, you can't. Mark Hamill in his 70s cannot look like Mark Hamill was in his 30s. Yeah, he's gotten much older. Um, you can see this happening with who was it in The Irishman, Connor, that they just digitally de-aged him but had him do the same physical acting?
Yeah, the whole cast: Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, others, I'm sure. But yes, it's an arguable uh, tool that's used in Hollywood. I mean, there's something appealing about having it. Oh, there's that young actor appearing on screen. It's like when there was young Robert Downey Jr. in Avengers: Civil War. It was interesting, and the any sort of falseness was smoothed over because the whole entire scene was a holographic projection. Um, yeah, we get cases like that. We've got the new Indiana Jones film, The Dial of Destiny, where Harrison Ford is apparently looks younger, sounds, moves still somewhat old. Um, Anything else comes to mind as as far as the presence of this technique.
Well, I think there's definitely more examples of that, but I think much more common is you just use a different actor
Mhm.
to play different ages of different characters. I mean, you did not have a de-aged Daisy Ridley's face on the 10-year-old version of her. You had a young actress,
Mhm.
uh, and so on. So I'll go ahead and put the thesis that we have out right here is that Connor and I are generally more in fans of just let an actor act and take on the role of the character that well for many people so like Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher are synonymous with their characters, but I mean they've grown older, they're passing on the torch, and these are characters that have a life of their own outside
Mhm.
of their portrayal by these individuals. So we're going to analyze and look at the 6 or 7 examples of digital likeness manipulation in the current Disney Star Wars canon and talk about what we thought of it and where we think it could have been done better and what we think of the practice as a whole.
Mhm. So yeah, I mean, we start off in Star Wars with the use of found footage with Rogue One, and having the likeness of Peter Cushing be used as uh, a recreation of the character Grand Moff Tarkin, member of the Empire who takes control over the Death Star plan. And at first it seemed like this is going to be a short cameo, but he turned out to be uh, a pretty major secondary antagonist next to Ben Mendelsohn playing Director Krennic. So uh, I think recently what spurred this topic of conversation was that uh, apparently the family of Peter Cushing is suing either the company who created his likeness, or I don't know if it's Disney in general, but there's going to be some litigation over the use of this actor's likeness. Um, and it's interesting because, to my eyes at least, it's always apparent when there's a digital character. If there's, it's better when the creature, like it's not an actual human person, but if it's something like Gollum or Thanos, not so much Jeff Bridges and Tron Legacy, just because our eyes are so trained naturally in order to pick out falseness, to pick out anything that's artificial, anything that's not like truly human. So to have a
Yeah,
character portrayed on screen for such an amount of screen time is just interesting, especially when there is an actor underneath that digital makeup who doesn't look too far off from Tarkin, and it's his voice being used.
yes, and we certainly The usual effect of noticing these small differences and it creeping people out or not seeming like a true person is called the uncanny valley,
Mhm.
where it's where you get so close but not quite to being perfectly human-like and perfect, and like where something obviously robotic does not trip our weirdness sensor, but there's this area between obviously false and almost but not quite there that dives deep into this unsettling area because, evolution has given humans the ability to note when something is off. It was a survival mechanism.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is our first example, but to review all of the examples that we'll review today. So we have um, Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin, whose face was digitally recreated on the physical actor Guy Henry. We then have Leia, also in Rogue One, um, whose face was also digitally recreated, physically paid by Norwegian actress Ingvild Dale, where again her Leia, Carrie Fisher's face as Leia was digitally overlaid over her own. Then we also have more recently in both The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, we have Luke Skywalker, who Mark Hamill's younger face was digitally overlaid onto.
It's like Max Lloyd Jones, an actor who again looks remarkably similar to Mark Hamill, close enough that you could just cast the man and have him portray Luke. But we'll talk more about that in a bit.
Yeah. So starting with this first example, like the first dip in 2015 into face reconstruction, digital replacement technology with Peter Cushing, this is the one I have actually some of the biggest issues with, though I also have um, troubles with the others. But Peter Cushing was not alive to give permission for his likeness to be used. I mean, and the character of Grand Moff Tarkin obviously belongs to Disney. You could cast whoever you want in the form of Grand Moff Tarkin, and he can do whatever you'd like on screen. But Peter Cushing was a real person who put in a great performance and is now deceased. And I think, in my opinion, that just digitally recreating his face rather than letting a different actor who looks close enough and just trusting your audience to suspend disbelief, it's kind of like a lot of the other digital changes that Lucas made during his respecialized editions or his double special editions, is that it's changing something and using technology and digital technology for something that's not adding to the experience. It's being used kind of as a crutch. It's like, let's don't worry, let's not use makeup or trust our audience. We need an exact computer generated replica of this actor that portrayed the same character in 1977. And like, come on, guys, we're in 2015. We're a quarter century more later, a third of
Mhm.
a century later. Peter Cushing has passed on. If you need to have the character, honor Peter Cushing's legacy and just have a different actor who can, as closely as possible, either mimic his mannerisms or take a new take on the character and have him step into that role.
And honestly, the people who are going to recognize, hey, that's Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin, there might be a handful of people who go through that thought process, but there will be people who are like, hey, that's Grand Moff Tarkin. You would have just pretty much as many people make that same connection if you had just cast that role with another actor and called him Grand Moff Tarkin. Because it's not like your I don't know, your average Star Wars fan is going to exactly remember uh, the or you know all of those Imperials with their gray suits tend to blend in. Peter Cushing, I would say, notwithstanding due to his performance, but from Empire onward, anyone in a green gray set of fatigues, it just kind of looks alike to me.
Yeah, and I mean, we would have Grand Moff Tarkin's voice in other series where he appears, such as The Bad Batch, is done by voice actor Wayne Pingram. You have other people that are portraying the character, at least his via his voice, and we completely accept. I mean, animation is different, but I mean, we have, Wayne Pingram doing imitation of Peter Cushing's voice as portrayed by the original character in his 16 minutes of screen time in 1977. Not to just, but you're not tied to having to have a replica of Peter Cushing's face forever. You have other people who are successfully taking the same character and making it their own. And the character has a life outside of how he was originally portrayed in physical media. So um, that is my take on it. And again, I find the Grand Moff Tarkin example, yeah, particularly vexing if not distasteful, because Peter
Mhm.
Cushing was not alive to consent to the process.
Exactly.
Even if his estate did, and now there's this suing situation and this lawsuit, all of that. Um, so that's my take. And do we want to continue on to the other Rogue One example then? What are your thoughts, Connor, on the for one scene, just the reproduction of Leia's face, and rather Carrie Fisher's face as Leia, onto Dan Villa.
I I see this very much, and with Grand Moff Tarkin, as really a means of showing off, like, oh, look at this technology. Like, look what we can do. They're being ambitious, but they're not. Uh, I would say making something that's going to look and feel authentic and fantastic 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when technology advances. You can go back to Terminator 2, and 90% of the effects are going to still stand up because they were done with intentionality. They were developed for the project. This uh, deep fake, or not even deep fake because we haven't gotten to that point yet, but the uh, face recreation is just not um, strong enough to allow for characters to have dialogue. So when we see Princess Leia, when she's not saying anything, the effect is composed well. But as soon as we get some mouth movement, it just feels unnatural. Her one line of hope feels unnatural. Princess Leia is an iconic silhouette, especially in A New Hope. That outfit, that hairstyle, you can put anyone in that costume. Uh, and you know, not even name, hey, Princess Leia, here's the plans of the Death Star. Her saying hope, wearing that, looking vaguely like a brunette woman, would get the idea across just as well, and in a way
Yeah,
that's not distracting.
yeah. I mean, to be frank, a not Carrie Fisher, of course, brought her own life to life for this character. But for one scene, if you take a woman with the same general like coloration, dye her hair, or makeup if you need to, give her the swirly bun hair, put her in the white robe, and just let her, this actress, take another take on Leia. Um, I mean, we have so many successful examples of characters being portrayed by different actors. I mean, they didn't have the technology, but I don't think you would have lost so much if you try to make Ewan McGregor look exactly like Alec Guinness. You know, he's playing a much younger character. So that's a very successful recasting. And then, yeah, we have other examples that we're going to where the recasting was successful, and I have examples, but we'll go through our digital likenesses first. But yeah, especially for one scene, I agree with you that it was definitely showing off the technology. And and it don't necessarily knock them for wanting to show off the technology, but it's somewhat, I think, being used in a way it's not the best use of it if you're just trying to make one actor look like another one who is either too old or deceased. And Carrie Fisher was still alive at the time that Rogue One was released, though she did pass away shortly after.
Yeah, and she is recreated in Rise of Skywalker with more so archival footage as her, present day self. And I don't know if that's so much as a recreation, if not, I know there's some digital blending, but it's not exactly the same ballpark. We do see a glimpse of the young Luke and Leia in that film, and it's not spectacular. It's not. I've never been a, I. It's contentious to have a flashback in Star Wars because there have never been flashbacks in Star Wars, and when you have a film convention that's so specific like that, it needs to be done very well. So Ray having a force vision, giving us glimpses to the past, fits in with that world. Luke and Kylo Ren reminiscing about their, shared trauma, their um, falling out, as it were. That is so well written that it's, that's the exception.
Yeah, and even in the
But
Book of Boba Fett, we have Tamara Morrison as Boba Fett reliving the past several months and years of his life,
mhm,
and that was just sort of an in media res story in that it's being used as the framing device foretelling a dual parallel track story across two timelines. That's a standard narrative convention, and that was part of the show I thought was executed very well. But
Mhm.
just this brief like cutaway 30-second flashback, I agree that's
Yeah,
not really what Star Wars does.
right. It's and again to show an effect that honestly lacks in comparison to the work done in Rogue One. So uh, I guess the transition from one Luke to another Luke, we have Luke Skywalker showing up in the second season finale of The Mandalorian. And I'm getting a lot of criticism, but I think this is another instance where the writing of the scene, the staging of the scene, and the action sequence that preceded it is uh, strong enough that I can almost look past the poor quality effects. They're distracting, but it's not a matter of it is so distracting me from the scene because there's so much uh, might and weight behind it.
No, and I think this is on the technology used, like it was unnecessary to have recreated Mark Hamill's face. I mean, and Max Lloyd Jones, as you said, does not look dissimilar to Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill was in his 70s at the time. So let a younger actor portray a late 30s Mark Hamill post
Mhm.
Empire or post Return of the Jedi. You don't need to digitally recreate his face. And I mean, and then it wasn't even just this one interaction on the bridge. They then brought the same technology back to have a Luke with several extended scenes with lots of talking between himself and Grogu. And I
Mhm.
just the whole time I was distracted from the very emotional weight of a Jedi Master offering an apprentice a choice by like how believable is the CGI making me look like it did not immerse me in the moment. It took me out of the moment.
Mhm.
And that's even leaving aside the ethical side of it's like, why are we not letting the actor here portray the character? Why are we putting a face on? And it's different than having like the David Prowse and James Earl Jones situation. Like, yes, James Earl
Mhm.
Jones did do the voice of Vader, but it's a combination between physical acting and voice acting.
Mhm.
Someone's face is different.
Right. Their likeness, I mean, uh, James Earl Jones is putting on a voice. He's putting on a persona. Carrie Fisher that is her face. She doesn't have to speak. Uh, that is her likeness. Um, so while I think the effects in the Book of Boba Fett on Luke are stronger, definitely more naturalistic and sharp compared to the Mandalorian, it's still not a like a three-dimensional performance. It's very flat. It's a little stilted, uh, even though Luke at this time was a little bit, flat himself in Return of the Jedi. He, there's still not the nuance of an actual performance behind um, that. So, and again, costuming, even though that is a slightly different variation, it's the Return of the Jedi Luke. Like Star Wars fans are going to inherently know, oh, I had a toy of this guy.
Yeah,
Um,
you give him one black glove, a green lightsaber, blonde hair, and a scar on the side of his face, and yeah, that's Luke. And have someone, and Bo-Katan would recognize Luke Skywalker, so you don't
mhm.
need, and as would Cara Dune. Cara Dune probably idolizes the man. He's the guy who blew up a Death Star and killed the Emperor. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the boogeyman of the Imperial Remnant and the hero of the rebellion. Um, the fact that he could have taken leadership of the New Republic if he decided to, and of course he had no interest in doing so. But the
Mhm.
expanded universe makes it very clear how popular Luke is among at least the former rebellion.
Right.
And
And they could have really had this be the opportunity of here's our new Luke. Like, here is the actor who's going to usher Luke into the 21st century. And
yeah,
instead, they're advertising a technology that is not ready, that is not, truly effective yet.
or it should it even be used? Because this takes us into, I think, a larger conversation, and we'll just talk about the Star Wars portion of it. But there have been like apparently contracts written where like they want an extra to come in for filming in Hollywood for one day, and they'll scan their whole face and then just get the
Mhm.
permanent ability to use their likeness however they want forever. It's one of the whole reasons the SAG-AFTRA strike happened was pushback against this AI recreation of actors who, just using technology to use someone's likeness. I mean, if you want to digitally create a person from whole cloth, and do that. Like video games do that and have a voice actor do it. Yeah, I mean, you can do that. But
Mhm.
if you want to like recreate someone's face permanently, I mean, that requires more than time of a one-time payment. I don't care what contract is written up. I would consider it unethical to just like
Yeah.
we're going to steal your face and use it forever. Um, I mean, because even if you're portraying the character who happened to be portrayed by an actor, like, but I mean, the Mace Windu of the Clone Wars looks different. I mean, it acts similarly, but is different,
Mhm.
portrayed by a different voice actor than Samuel L. Jackson. And I wouldn't say you have to compensate Samuel L. Jackson for the existence of a never version of Mace Windu. But when Marvel Comics wanted to use Samuel Jackson's exact likeness to be Nick Fury in one of their comics, his stipulation was you got to offer me to play him if you ever film this. And what do you know? He's like, you can do it. There was a business arrangement that happened there, and now Samuel Jackson is the highest compensated actor in the world
Right.
because he's in the two biggest film franchises that have ever existed.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think. So yeah, are there any other examples of digital face recreation that we want to talk about, or do you want to delve into the what we think are the better examples of like recasting and sort of the edge cases?
Yeah, I really, that's about it as far as what we have in Star Wars. And I mean, it comes down to I would like to see Luke play a prominent role in what's going on in the galaxy, especially if Thrawn is to be a force to be reckoned with. And I don't want his screen time or his performance to be affected because they're trying to make it look just like Mark Hamill. Uh, it's time to let other actors step up and embody these characters. So we take a look at James Bond, and even though nothing will match the continuity of Star Wars and the length of its consistent storytelling, it's been done for Spider-Man, it's been done for Batman, it's been done, and, with stories that have ongoing continuity, like with Marvel players and Rhodey and the Hulk, major characters, and people, accepted that. And there's even the precedents in Star Wars, like you brought up with Alec Guinness and Ewan McGregor. So the that is how Hollywood would do things. They would recast. They would, allow a character to be multifaceted and not just Carrie Fisher.
Yeah,
So,
or
yeah.
or you do the approach that both Star Wars and the MCU took when a beloved actor died, with both Carrie Fisher and Chadwick Boseman, and you let the character die.
Mhm.
And of course, Black Panther will return, played by other voice actors and other actors in the future, but the version in the Prime MCU died with the actor, and I thought that was very tastefully done. And if they had tried to digitally recreate Chadwick Boseman's face, I could not imagine a thing more tasteless. And at least they were able
Yeah.
to realize that. Um, yeah, but I think I've identified what I think is the source of why they decided to digitally recreate Grand Moff Tarkin, Leia, and Luke. Um, and that was the underperformance of Solo: A Star Wars Story at the box office.
Mhm.
When they
Unfortunately.
recast, yeah, a younger Han Solo and had him play as Alderaan Ehrenreich. I personally really like Solo: A Star Wars Story. It did exactly what I didn't want that movie to do, but despite itself, has charm and
Mhm.
meaning to it and fits quite nicely into the greater continuity. So despite its flaws, I really liked that movie, and I thought Alden killed it as a younger Han Solo. I believed him as the character. I did not find it distracting that this was not exactly Harrison Ford. Sometimes could the writing have been a little better? Probably, but I think Alden gave it his all, and I thought I would have loved to see him continue on as a younger Han Solo, or if we need a Han Solo in the upcoming like Thrawn plot that's going on post Ahsoka, and you need the Millennium Falcon to show up, throw Alden in the cockpit. It like put some makeup on him to make him look a little older.
Mhm.
Um, Recast a younger Leia to be, yeah, like, and again, instead of bringing in Leia in Ahsoka, they also had C-3PO just carry a message from her as a political slight, which I thought was a great writing. It's like we're not going to either digitally recreate her face. She considers the senator so far beneath her. She's sending a message with her droid.
Yeah.
So um, that was great. So, but I think that was why it spooked Disney into like, oh, these characters are too beloved. And I'm like, no, Solo did not underperform because it was Alden Ehrenreich
Right.
portraying Han Solo, it was because this movie went through like multiple reshoots and multiple directors, and
Mhm.
ultimately it did exactly what a Han Solo movie shouldn't do, which was go through why he did the Kessel Run. How did he meet Chewbacca? How did he win the Millennium Falcon from Lando? It hit every beat from his past that was mysterious and cool. And instead of having a new story that maybe hit one of those but left the others mysterious, it hit all of them. Every single piece
Mhm.
of backstory we knew about Han Solo showed up in that movie and left nothing else to mystery. And it was, and despite that, still a decent movie. Like his showdown with his mentor, he just shoots him in the chest. I loved that. Um,
Mhm.
I loved I enjoyed the love story because it was tragic and didn't end well, which Star Wars needs to have more guts to do. In that, it was a very Han Solo type story where he gets his ultimate goal and it's hollow and empty by the end.
Yeah,
But
I
that,
agree entirely. I think that's having uh, the soul of the character is entirely present in Solo. Having just the mannerisms, the attitude, the presence. It's something that I feel like Owen Ehrenreich nailed. Um, and you're absolutely correct in that story-wise, it kind of closed itself off from ever needing a sequel, unless they wanted to go into like, hey, say this is the, you know, uh, if we can get the Empire Strikes Back to Solo's A New Hope, just to see like, okay, let's do something entirely different that is not dependent on, oh, this is what you knew about Han Solo, but here's what you never knew. And that way we have even more of a reason to have a different actor portraying the character because we get that different angle. This isn't as confident. This isn't as notable a Han. So of course he should be different. His presence should be slightly different. Uh, and I think my only qualm with it is kind of the opposite of the Wolverine Hugh Jackman issue, where he's just a little short. It's a little short for a smuggler, don't you think?
yeah, well, I mean, Harrison Ford is a very tall man. So,
Mm,
and again, I'm willing to like give the man some lifts in his shoes. You know, if Peter Jackson could make Elijah Wood look like he was 3'6" for an entire film trilogy, you
mm,
can make Han Solo look like he's a little bit taller.
yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah. But I mean, you have lots of examples, even in Star Wars, of successful, multiple actors portraying the same character very successfully. You
Mhm.
have Boba Fett, which is somewhat eased, of course, by the fact that his original appearance, he never took off his helmet. But I mean, the very original Star Wars Holiday Special, played by Don Franks, and then by the time he appeared in Empire Strikes Back, the physical acting done by Jeremy Bulloch and the voice acting by Jason Wingreen, which, much like David Prowse and James Earl Jones, combined to make a very chilling character.
Mhm.
And then in the more modern times, Tamura Morrison coming into play him, reinforcing the continuity. Tamura Morrison famously played Jango Fett. And then because Boba Fett is his clone and son, comes in and plays Boba Fett. And I thought, Tamura Morrison did a great job as Boba Fett. I know some people have issues with the Boba Fett series, but I don't think any
Mhm.
of it can be ascribed to Tamura Morrison's acting of the character. And we entirely, I still, despite that, I believed Tamura Morrison as Boba Fett. But even if the direction taken was not, ideal from some fans' perspective, you never doubted that it was Boba Fett. Just maybe
Mhm.
that the things Boba Fett was given to do were not the most exciting.
Sure. One additional note on Boba is that Tamara Morrison now voices Boba Fett in the special editions, the current available editions of Star Wars. And that's one of those
Ah,
changes where it's like, okay, like I get it. I get it. That is a change that's used to keep continuity, and it's a lot easier to do a vocal re-edit than it is to do, something with late 90s era effects in a film that was made 20 years prior.
yeah, I'm gonna go back and say dislike that change because then you're taking away. People knew Jason Wingreen's voice as Boba Fett for decades.
Mhm.
And this is not knocking Tamura Morrison. It's not, someone said, I'll pay you a bunch of money to re-record the lines of Jason Wingreen in the original trilogy. And Tamura Morrison was like, okay, they want to pay me to do this character. But whoever made that decision to do that, I'm like, come on, guys, can't accept that your audience can suspend some disbelief that different actors can portray different characters. We're even going back to I have mixed feelings about James Earl Jones's voice. So before his death, he signed a contract where he gave permission for his voice as Darth Vader to be digitally recreated using an AI tool that
Mhm.
Disney possesses. And on one hand, I mean, he did it before his death, and so he was allowed to do that. But on the other, like, do we want to have James Earl Jones now after his death? Do we want to have his voice being produced by a computer rather than have someone else come in and try to take over Darth Vader's voice? And if they can't, uh, well, human life trudges on.
Yeah, it reminds me of General Grievous, and I know the notability of Grievous versus Vader is clear. Who's more likable, who's more popular, who matters more to Star Wars. But Grievous's voice is down to a filter, and multiple different actors have portrayed the character. So in a way, like James Earl Jones has to become a vocal filter, um, an audio filter, and it's that matter of where you draw the line. I mean, that's his likeness. That's James Earl Jones. It's um, certified, copywritten likeness, owned, operated by Disney. So, what is a face? And we're complaining about effects that are primitive, but in 10, 20, 30 years, what's going to be possible? Any quibble could be gone, but the moral dilemma is still going to remain.
Yeah, the show off the new technology piece might go away, but then the ethical concerns of should we digitally recreate a dead person to make a deepfake of them in our sci-fi fantasy or science fantasy space epic? And I go on the side of you lose a certain humanity and authenticity by locking the performance behind, at least in a live action sense, behind an AI, likeness. And animation is a different thing. You have to have a voice actor, but then they're replacing people's voices and going back and editing that out. And unless it had turned out that Wingreen had done something heinous in his past, where we wanted to sort of wipe him out. I mean, Ezra Miller still got a movie released after all the allegations against him. So come on, this is not an ethical concern. This is
Sure. It's Hollywood,
showing off. Yeah. So that's my take on the situation. I know we normally do some more
Mhm.
analysis. This is more of our editorial opinion column this week on digital likenesses. I think I've made my point very clear, Connor. So is there anything
Oh
else
yeah.
that you want to add in this sense?
I'll say this. No one has given it a single stink about the new actor behind Chewbacca and Kelmaka and other Wookiees as well. That actor would be this is a Finnish fella. I had to look up his name, and now I know why. Junos Sotamo. He is a very tall Finnish man. Um, no one's complaining that they've recast Chewbacca, and I know that Chewbacca is a costume, but again, you put someone in a Princess Leia costume, and we're going to know who it is in a Star Wars film. So that'll be my last question. We have grounds for an actor to play Luke, an actor to play Han. Do you have anyone in mind that you think would make a good Leia?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person to know specific actors' names when I haven't looked them up for our episode beforehand. But I
Very
mean,
fair.
yeah, the MCU and Star Wars are very good at casting the right people. Like I didn't entirely buy Bill Burr as ex-Imperial sharpshooter, and then he had one of the most emotional scenes
Yes.
about Operation Cinder in Mandalorian season 2 and made the entire episode. So Star Wars is pretty good at casting. Sometimes the writing and direction can be a little uneven, but I've never felt like very yeah. Other than some people criticizing like the celebrity cameos in that one episode of The Mandalorian, I've
Mhm.
felt like they take casting very seriously.
Oh yes.
But there's also I
New
recognize
characters,
that
yeah.
they're trying to please a fandom, ourselves included, that are not always happy with inconsistencies. Like, look at this: you have
Mhm.
Ashley Eckstein, who did the voice of Ahsoka, and then people were very unhappy that they physically cast Rosario Dawson to play the same character, even though Ashley Eckstein is a voice actress and not primarily a physical actress. And could she have done the character? Perhaps. And then she said they didn't offer the role to her, and But again, I was fine with the character being portrayed by two different people, different mediums, different times in their lives. Um, they didn't try to digitally alter Rosario Dawson's voice to sound like Ashley Eckstein. They just trusted Dawson as an actor to
Mhm.
do the best for the character.
Well, I do have one suggestion, and this would be the opposite. This would be a campaign to try to appease fans. Uh, but we have an actor who has portrayed Leia in Rise of Skywalker, and that's her daughter, Billy Lord. There's a fan campaign to have Billy Lord play Leia. Uh, and then I think that'd be one of the first times that I'm sure there's been other times in Hollywood where a parent and child have portrayed the same character. In fact, a Godzilla show, Monarch Legacy, Legacy of Monarch, something like that, has Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt Russell playing the same character. So people like that. Uh, and like, what a better way to honor Carrie Fisher. So that's my uh, suggestion, at least.
Yeah. So ultimately, as it's probably been pretty clear, I'm coming down on the side of just let another actor do it,
Oh, yes.
voice actor or physical actor. Don't digitally recreate people. If it's a CGI character like Jabba the Hutt, you can do whatever you want. But if it's someone's face, leave that alone.
Mhm. Mhm. Much agreed.
Right.
So, yeah. So, from there, Star Wars fans, let us know what you think. Do you like the deep fakes? Is it, something that you find interesting? If so, why? And do you have picks for who could be popular recasts if they delve into that direction in the future?
Yeah, thank you for listening to our hot takes about digital actor recreation, recasting, and sort of AI reimagining of people's faces in Star Wars, and our review of examples. Thank you for listening to episode 79 of Talking Star Wars, and we'll see you next week for more discussion.
We'll see you sometime soon in a galaxy right here.